So I guess it depends how it affects the cell and whether it causes damage in too much quantities. We should look into this. I think we're speculating a lot. There's probably
yeah. I'm doing some hard like reaching here.
I was wondering if, like, because Clomid is, on cycle has been shown to
Can we briefly talk about this Gonadorelin and HCG?
Oh yeah.
Before Steve tells us about this really interesting GLP thing, but briefly about this. So you noticed, where did this come about? I think that Pete Rubish mentioned it. His HRT clinic. Can you tell us the background, Derek?
Yeah. So the HCG has like been reclassified as. I think it's like a biologic or something now. I forget the exact thing that's happening. And frankly, I stay more out of the back end stuff. I'm more marketing front end stuff. But as far as I know, it's a lot of these clinics, it's harder to get access to it, harder to get access now, or it's more expensive. I don't really remember the exact reason, but I know that margins wise, they're getting more money now to sell this Gonadorelin stuff, which is a GnRH agonist, which if you're, viewers are probably more familiar with things like triptorelin, things of that nature that operate in a similar way. And basically the idea would be to, well, I guess the marketing angle that a lot of them are taking are, oh, you don't want to take HCG because that's, it's not natural. Whereas GnRH agonists, you're basically getting your whole HPTA involved and you're, mimicking what you would naturally do if you weren't shut down on TRT. So with this, we can mimic the entire cycle of your HPTA and avoid, like, we're not skipping the part with the gonadotropin-releasing hormone at the top. We're actually getting the full spectrum of effects going, and you're regulating how much LH and FSH output you get, and it's endogenously produced LH and FSH rather than a synthetic analog without any FSH whatsoever. So it's like, logically, it actually sort of sounds good. You're getting actual real LH and FSH, not an analog of LH, which may have some strange interactions with epigenetics that I don't know about that might, who knows, during fertility, I would prefer having real LH probably than some analog thing personally. And then
or some recombinant stuff,
yeah. And then you get the actual FSH too on top of that. So why would this be suboptimal?
And you keep your pituitary active, right?
Yeah, exactly. And when you have a organ system that's like inactive for years on end, what happens to it is just, atrophy and like stop functioning entirely to the point that you lose it or whatever the saying is, you use it or lose it.
Luckily, the pituitary is, involved in so many endocrine systems, like the growth hormone, the prolactin, and
right.
A couple other hormones. So at least it stay active. I think it's mostly the hypothalamus that really downregulates, which is, of course, the main source of gonadotropin hormone releasing hormones. So even if you take gonadorelin or caspeptin-10 or block the estrogen receptors with Clomid, I don't think that the HPTA even then stays intact.
No, but there's more concerns than just that. So first of all, you're right, absolutely, Derek. There's apparently some research showing that natural LH and FSH synthesis may be somehow superior. Number one, it may induce conception a little bit quicker in some studies than using HCG, using a gonadotropin-releasing hormone receptor agonist. That's one thing. And, obviously having it natural may be better. But the issue is this. So just for the audience to remember, we always talk about this, but there's in the brain two parts, the hypothalamus and pituitary, and the third part in your body is the gonads. The gonads produce the testosterone and the sperm. The hypothalamus releases something called gonadotropin-releasing hormone, which tells the pituitary to release LH and FSH. When you take HCG, you replace LH. You don't replace FSH. The problem is gonadotropin-releasing hormone is released by the hypothalamus in a pulsatile fashion. It's not released continuously. And it's released every 2 hours or so. And what happens is if you release the gonadotropin-releasing hormone continuously, it actually causes a downregulation in the gonadotropin-releasing hormone receptor in the pituitary, causing a total halt in the synthesis of LH and FSH, which is why pedophiles are treated with gonadotropin-releasing hormone agonists. However,
triptorelin,
yeah, exactly, or lurolelin. There's a few of them, but the thing about it is, so when they use it for fertility, what they do is there's an actual implant pump that releases the gonadotropin-releasing hormone every 2 hours in you, which is extremely inconvenient. And extremely, I mean, even the academic papers will mention this is very inconvenient for people to do. Otherwise, you're going to take something that makes you a eunuch if it gives you it consistently. Now, the pulsatile one, is it really useful? Well, it's useful in one sense. The results of the pulsatile gonadotropin-releasing hormone studies show that people have lower testosterone on that than HCG. And it's hypothesized to be because they're not maxing out their luteinizing hormone response. But you could easily figure that out for yourself before you go on steroids. You could just take HCG, you know, assuming you're crashed, or even if you're not crashed, you take HCG, see what your testosterone level is at, get a testosterone level that you're okay with, you don't feel is too much, and then just stay at that dose. So you know you're not overdoing it. And it may be a consistent. The other thing is that now it's not circadian, but that's also somewhat fine because after our 30s, our steroidogenesis is not very circadian anyway. It's somewhat flattened. What do you guys think?
I agree. Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I agree. How's my video and audio quality in your guys' end? Because you guys,
very good.
Yeah. Okay. Good. On my side, I can't barely see you, but I can hear you. So
you can't see us?
It's like very blurry, so that the connection is not too great on my end.
Oh, really? Well, it's good that we've both you saved it in our computers.
Yeah. Imagine if you were recording right now only. Fuck.
No, that'd be messed up. Yeah. So I need both of your recordings so I can splice it all together.
Yeah.
So, you know, going by the blood work that I've seen on gonadorelin and kisspeptin, you know, both of these compounds, like at the recommended dosage of the hormone replacement clinic as a replacement of the HCG protocols that we were doing before when it was still pharmaceutical or medically approved, you see that the LH and FSH is like
lower
in range, but at the bottom. And I think that if you block the estrogen receptor with Clomid on cycle, which is obviously the side effects are pretty much intolerable after a prolonged period of time, you see that the LH and FSH is actually higher.
Higher than on gonadotropin.
Gonadotropin, on gonadorelin and kisspeptin 10.
Really? Yeah.
And of course, and with triptorelin, that's not sustainable because the lowest dose is like 100 milligrams. You know, single administration. But if you do that multiple times, and especially if you go pharmaceutical grade, that's like 3.75 milligrams. Or what was the dose? 100 micrograms, and then the sterilizing dose is like in the milligrams range.
With triptorelin, it's sketchy too because a lot of these people are getting it from research chemical sites where it comes in 1 to 2 milligrams per vial, which is like a castration dose if you fuck up your measurement.
Right. I mentioned it in the mentioned it in the post-cycle therapy ebooks. Even if you go with 3.75 or 4 or 11.25 milligram triptorelin dose, don't use that because you're so far off of the useful dose. You're just overstimulating, and unless you're sexual deviant or you have prostate enlargement, it's not something you want to use.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the castration dose again? I don't even remember. I knew it was in the milligrams, but I don't know what it is.
There's 2 doses. It's 3.75 milligrams per vial for a single administration and 11.25 milligrams.
So how come?
That's multiple days, by the way, for complete castration.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not a single dose, but why risk it, right?
Those individuals would eventually recover down the line, would they not?
It's permanent.
Really?
I think that's permanent. Yeah. So the guys.
So what happens to the rest of their pituitary then? That does all the other stuff.
It's only the process of the luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. I don't think it affects prolactin and growth hormone secretion, etc. I don't think it affects that.
It could only be permanent if it was if the receptor on the pituitary for gonadotropin-releasing hormone, or if gonadotropin-releasing hormone was excitatory and that receptor died. That's the only way it would happen if you maxed out and the receptor died. But like you said, Steve, if you just keep a sustained dose, it'll cause that in the short term. I don't know if it's. I think if you do the sustained dose for a period of time, then like we said with the body, if you don't use it, you lose it. You'll eventually have issues.
Right. Doesn't that seem weird? How it it's so sensitive to overdosing that you could castrate yourself, but then you can just blast your balls with HCG and somehow be fine for however long.
I'm not sure if you can castrate yourself with a single time. I'm not sure. And the only, as we said, so look at it in the brain. So because I know the nervous system better than other things. So in the brain, if you have too much dopamine, the dopamine receptors would downregulate. And if that doesn't work, the cells will die. That'll happen for dopamine. That won't happen for GABA. If you have too much GABA, like if you go overdose on a benzo, you're not going to have GABAergic cells die. because
Right,
GABA
right.
isn't excitatory as a hormone. So I guess it depends how it affects the cell and whether it causes damage in too much quantities. We should look into this. I think we're speculating a lot. There's probably reasons there.
Yeah. I'm doing some hard like reaching here.
I was wondering if, like, because Clomid is, on cycle has been shown to